Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thursday History Chat Live, where we're going to take a meander through history, see what comes up, talk about some of the anniversaries of history this week, just have a general chat about history. Welcome, everyone. I can see familiar names joining, so welcome to you. And also, welcome if you're new here. If you live British history and history in general, then you're definitely in the right place. So thank you for coming along. And thank you also if you didn't manage to catch it live and you're watching this on the playback or listening on the podcast. Good afternoon, everyone. I can see, or morning, afternoon, evening. I know there's people from all over the world who join us, and you're all at very different time zones. So thank you for spending your time with me. So I am streaming live on Instagram and on YouTube, as I do every Thursday at this time. It's 1 o'clock GMT. But like I say, if you don't catch me live one week, that's fine. You can watch on the catch up. Hi, Anandita and Lisa watching on YouTube. I can see Renee, Katie, Doug. I can see lots of people joining on Instagram as well. So hi, welcome. So today we're going to talk about a few things, but you can always throw questions into the comments. If I can answer, I will. Maybe you've seen something of interest in the news, and if I've seen it and I can comment on it, then I will. So today I wanted to, we can chat about the Rizio murder. There was the anniversary of that yesterday, and today is the anniversary of Henry VIII's first jousting accident in 1524. So I thought we'd talk about those couple of things. This week has also seen the anniversary of Queen Anne, the final Stuart Queen, coming to the throne. Now I mentioned her last week because but I'll come back to why. And also, Lisa, who's watching on YouTube, you asked me a question about her statue in Blenheim. So we'll come back to that as well. And there's also just a couple of other things that I've noticed in the news. And also I'll let you know what's happening in Visiting Tudor Britain and in History After Dark. So hi, Jenna. Hi, my journalist. I can see everyone joining. Hi, thank you so much. Welcome. So I thought we'll kick off with talking about the Ritzier murder, because there's different accounts, and I want to talk about sort of the differences, and I mean not in any massive detail, and I'm interested to hear what you think as well. But first, before I do that, I have a special shout out for two people. Julia has joined the upper class tier of my Patreon, and Cassie has joined the nobility tier. So a big shout out to Julia and Cassidy for joining Patreon today. All patrons have access to a look inside Acton Court. I spoke about Acton Court last week. It's not open to the public very often. In fact, it's only open for 4 weeks this year to the public. So I'm really happy to have been able to go there and film. So patrons, you will see you will see a tour of that. Anyone nobility tier and above gets the full shebang. Upper class get a slightly shorter version. Mad Jenna says last night's History After Dark will be mentioned. It will be mentioned. It will be mentioned. If I haven't mentioned it, if I just prod me. I'll tell you what happened in History After Dark last night, and I'll tell you about the History After Dark podcast. There's a slight change to that, and also History After Dark next week as well, because we happen to know what we're going to be talking about next week. Also, before I go on to the Ritzier Murder, thank you to Leah and Ian who bought me a coffee. And if you want to support me in my work, then it's much appreciated. And you can either join my Patreon, which means you get lots of History Lover benefits, or you can just simply buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Philippa, which is, like I say, always appreciated. And thank you to everyone who has done that so far. Right, so the Ritzier murder, whether I don't know whether you all know who this is. So there's a man called David Rizzio, or it's pronounced, sorry, I presume it was pronounced Rizio at the time, but it could be spelt in the Italian form RICCO. In the if you read about it now, it'll be R-I-Z-Z-O. Like I say, presumably written down that way because of the way it was pronounced. And he was a private secretary to Mary, Queen of Scots, for French matters. So presumably she had different ones, but they were friends, it seems. And he came to court originally as a musician with the ambassador of Savoy. No, the ambassador of, where was he from? Can't remember. But he came with, I think it was the ambassador to Savoy. So he came as a musician, and while to the Scottish court, and he's a very good musician, very good singer. Apparently, he sang lovely bass. And Mary had a quartet without a bass. So there's 3 in this quartet, and needed a fourth member. And so there was Rizzio. So he rises in favour. So he's got a job at the court, and he rises in favour and influence. Now, of course, that sort of thing doesn't go unnoticed by the people in the court already. When Mary had got back to Scotland, there was already tensions. She's a Catholic queen. She's been absent, and Scotland is already turning to the Reformed faith. So there's already tensions. Now she marries, as you will remember, she marries Lord Darnley, Henry Stuart Lord Darnley. Sorry, Jenna says, I just have to say that last night's History After Dark was awesome and in perfect timing to help me avoid my ex-man-child. Oh, glad to be of service. Yeah, I'll come back to talking about that because it was very good. We had a guest on with History After Dark, and it's always really, it's really pleasant to have a guest on, and the tech allowed it last night. Last time we tried to have 4 people on at once, it had a bit of a meltdown and chucked at least one of us off at any one time. So, but last night it worked. So yeah, so you've got Rizzio. So he becomes Mary's private secretary for French affairs in an already fragmented court. Mary had married Henry Stuart Lord Darnley, and Mary wouldn't grant him the crown matrimonial, which would effectively have made him king. It was Rizzio crackers. So he was, I mean, he was an all-round nasty piece of work. In fact, he would be included in any History After Dark discussion on deceased gits. And so he was insanely jealous. And the film Mary, Queen of Scots, I don't think that relationship happened between Rizzio and Darnley at all. But anyway, so Rizzio is not. He might go in favour with the Queen, but he's making a lot of enemies at court, in the rest of the court, and effectively it ends up in his murder. Now, the murder happened at the Palace of Holyrood House. So Holyrood House was an abbey, and I'll tell you about that later in a bit. I'm a journalist. And the palace had been built next to it. So you've got the Palace of Holyrood House, and Mary was there, and you can still go to Mary's bedchamber, to her apartments, and she was having dinner in a side room. I wouldn't call it a chamber, it's small, with Rizzio and with a couple of her ladies in waiting. Now, this is where accounts start to change, or write-ups, should I say. And I haven't looked at primary sources. I was trying to remind myself of the story, and there's loads of different stories. Anyway, one says 80 armed men came. Now, that seems a little bit over the top. No, but either way, a group of armed men came to suppose, arrest Rizzio. They wanted him to go with them. He refuses. They threaten him, and he hides behind Mary. Now, he was, it's one of the, so he's stabbed multiple times. He's stabbed, I think, 56 times. His body has 56 or 57 wounds. And I suppose they each have a turn. It diffuses the responsibility for the murder. The dagger left in Rizzio, in the corpse, was Darnley's dagger. So Darnley could not basically, remove himself from any of the responsibility. A mad journalist, are her bedchambers still relatively intact and unchanged? They are intact. I couldn't tell you whether they are unchanged because I don't know how they were used in between her and the present day. Certainly they've been put back. It's been years since I've been up to Edinburgh, so I want to go back and explore again. Well, there's plenty of places I still haven't been to at all. And you kind of you split between, do I want to go back somewhere, or do I want to see somewhere new? Imagine as he hid behind a woman, and then they say we are the weak agenda. Not only did he hide behind Mary, Mary was 6 months pregnant. She was 6 months pregnant. She was threatened herself with a shotgun to her belly. The baby was the future James VI of Scotland, who became James I of England also. So yes, he hid behind it. Now, again, one of the write-ups that I read says that he may have sustained some of his stab wounds while still holding on to Mary, whilst being hid behind her, which means they just weren't even waiting, for anything. They were most definitely going to murder him. And he was unceremoniously dumped again. The accounts seem to differ, or the write-ups seem to differ, between whether he was thrown down the private staircase, which these men were supposed to have. I mean, there were no nobility; these were known people. Whether his body was thrown down the private staircase from, which basically some call it a secret staircase. It's not a bloody secret staircase. It was a staircase that led from the apartments below, which Darnley lived in. It's not secret, private, okay, but it's not secret. Whether he was dumped down there or whether he was dumped down the main staircase. So again, like I said, two different things. Or one said he was thrown out the window. I'd never heard that one before. Okay, so here comes the bit that gripes me the most, actually, or most. It's not about the story itself, it's about afterwards. So if you go to the Palace of Holyrood House now, like I say, it's been years since I've been there, so I can't quite remember the layout in my head, but I think there's an antechamber. And in there's a plaque on the wall which says, it sort of commemorates his murder there. And on the floor it is a red stain. Okay, some of you may have heard me speak about this before. Now, if you read the website for the Palace of Holyrood House, which comes under the Royal Collection, Royal Collection Trust. So yeah, I can't remember. Basically, the Queen still lives there, so they have a different charity running the houses that the Queen still uses. But they even talk about a stain being the blood stain. Now, when I did visit the Palace of Holyrood House and I saw this red stain on the floor that was supposedly the blood of Rizzio, it just didn't ring true. Can you think of anywhere else where we know there's been murders taking place, where we can actually see such a vivid physical reminder of that? I don't remember anything else, and you might have an example. I might be wrong. It just didn't seem very likely. And I quizzed the room guide who was there. I asked her about it at the time, and this is why I don't understand why the website still talks about this as a blood stain. The floor is not the original floor, or the floor is not the floor that would have been there in the 16th century. When Rizzio was murdered in 1566. So it's not the original floor. So it can't have the blood stain on it. Neither is it at the bottom of any staircase or outside a window where we're told his body was, unceremoniously dumped. Um, and So it appears, like I say, I asked about it, and in Victorian times there was a big surge in really, I suppose it was the starts of tourism beyond pilgrimage, actual sort of for just days out reasons, and housekeepers of big houses would show people around all sorts of places, including the Palace of Holyrood House, and not ones to get in the way of a good the truth get in the way of a good story. Red boot polish was rubbed onto the floor to recreate the idea of this being a blood stain, that there was the blood of Rizzio that had stained the floor for 4, 5 Victorian times, 4 centuries, and uh, and that it was still there. I mean, it's yeah. So I don't know why on their website it even mentions it really, because I think the follow-on history part of that would is interesting. Imagenesis also, like with all stab wounds, it would likely be a blood puddle and not an itty bitty stain. Oh no, they've got, well, from what I remember, they kind of went for it. They did make quite a bit of a stain on the floor. I suppose you're right. I mean, there's going to have been a lot of blood, but it's not. It's not. Oh, Mike says, was it oxblood boot polish? I don't know. You tell me. What was red boot polish in Victorian times stained with? I don't know. But so, and that murder just incensed Mary. Yes, Jenna. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, there would have been quite a lot of blood. You're right. I suppose I'm thinking that it's the attack was frenzied, and it was in the antechamber of her bedchamber. Sorry, in this small private room off the bedchamber. He would have had to have been dragged. Well, he would have been dragged out of this mini chamber, this small room, through her bedchamber, and then into this antechamber, I'm calling it. So why only there then, if that's where there's a stain? Because his body wasn't supposed to have been dumped there. I don't know. I could have it wrong, but like I say, I quizzed the yes, Bobby says it would have been in more than one area. Yeah, exactly. And Ipsa 1959 reminds me of the Canterbury ghost novel, repainting the stains over and over. Oh, it's an aid to the story. It, like Michael says here, it was good for tourism, and it is still good for tourism, I'm imagining, is what he means. Why would they still talk about the blood stain? Yes, but my point is as well, though, that the follow-on history is interesting. The rise in interest in history in the Victorian era, I find quite fascinating. People were able to spend a bit of time, and this is how they, do a little bit of traveling, and this is how they spent their time looking around these kind of places. Lisa says, were any of these murderers punished? I'm trying to remember the rest of the story now. I mean, Mary was incensed, and she wrote to Elizabeth I, because so after this point, Mary was kept under house arrest, but she got access to Darnley and persuaded him that they should leave. So I mean, he's just I don't know how to describe him. Really one of the most despicable characters ever. And yeah, well, of course, he came to a sticky end in Kirkfields in a mysterious explosion while he was staying there. Mary didn't stay with him. So yeah, So that's the Rizio murder. I'm trying to think about how I don't think they were punished. I can't remember the rest of the story. I should have to have a look. Maybe someone else knows. But yeah, so not very nice. But it is gruesome. I suppose that's why it's one of those stories that's quite captivating. This idea of a queen, a pregnant queen, shielding a friend who's then just savagely and brutally murdered. It's quite a imagination capturing event. Genesis, I don't think they were punished either, if I remember correctly. Yeah, I think events then carried on at quite a pace, because it's all part of this faction, and this division that was happening already. Yeah, Renee says they weren't punished. I think we only have a couple of names like I say, for this one account says 80 people, but we know of a couple of names. But again, any of the write-ups that I've read doesn't have a lot of names, so it was obviously planned out. It's going to be a lot of people. They all took a go, so it's like, who are you gonna blame? And Mary didn't have she should have had the authority, but it didn't seem to work that way, did it? Lisa says, just as Amy Robsart's death could have put Elizabeth on the block if she'd married Dudley, could someone have murdered Darnley to somehow put Mary on the block sooner? Well, I mean, Mary's story is full of intrigue, but she's not an innocent bystander in anything. She had her agenda. Everyone did. Marion says, would Mary have known some of them? Yes, yep, she would. Michael says, I follow a page on Facebook called Church Monuments, and one of the contributors was talking about how they can be desecrated. One lady who'd been cleaning the effigy of a knight for years said it took, waiting for the next bit. I've been, you just reminded me talking about effigies. I have been researching Salisbury Cathedral. We're going to be talking about Salisbury tomorrow on Visiting Tudor Britain. Michael says, so finishing that, one lady who'd been cleaning the effigy of a knight for years said it took her ages to get the remaining paint off. Is that paint that should have stayed on if it was an effigy? Is it a painted effigy? She thought she'd be cleaning it. Mad journalist, well, nobility do not oftentimes get punished for their crimes, do they? A theme that continues, I would wager. Yeah, so Michael just reminded me they're talking about effigies. So tomorrow is Visiting Tudor Britain, and at 4:00, I think we're going live on Debs, so it's Tudor_Times, Tudor.Times on Instagram. We're talking about Salisbury Cathedral. And it's just reminded me because one of the stories around Salisbury is the moving. I need to look this guy up. A guy called Wyatt in the 18th century, so not a Tudor Wyatt, who just vandalized basically the cathedral. And one of the things he did, and this is why I need to look into it because it blows my mind, is the effigies of on top of tombs were moved and swapped, so they weren't on the correct tomb. I need to look into that more. I wish I'd have got it off the bookshelf. I got that from this amazing book that I've got that was published in 1912, and it is about England's cathedrals. So it's got lots of information about the cathedral, but what I love is it sets off. It sets me off on sort of going down wormholes, looking at the history, because he'll tell the writer tells the story of cathedral that it's looking at. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure that can't be true. So it's but it's one of those you have to then go off and have a look. But yeah, so one of the things he was saying was that the monuments have been moved and effigies have been swapped. So I'm going to look into that more before the Visiting Tudor Britain tomorrow. Jenna says, during one of Janet's Tudor, Uncle Best Speaker suggested that it was Mary Queen of Scots' half brother, the Earl of Moray, could have been the one to initiate Darnley's murder. I think there's a lot of people would have wanted him dead. He was in the way. Yeah. Oh yes. Look, remember who makes laws? The people in charge make laws. Always have done. Cool. So that's Mary. Another event that a lot of you will know about this, because I know it's in your sphere of interest, and that is the jousting accident of Henry VIII this is in 1524. So it's the anniversary of that today, the 10th of March, 1524. And Henry gets knocked off his horse in a jousting accident. And it could have been, it's one of those what ifs, it could have been a pivotal moment, because if he'd have died, he had no sons at the time. It's 1524. So him and Catherine have no surviving sons. And so let me tell you about it. Apparently there was the convention on the list. So when you're jousting, is you've got obviously the whole armor, and you'd put your helmet on, visor up as you got to get on the horse, because once you've got the visor down, you can't see very much at all, apparently, and you can't hear very much in the helmet anyway. So there's a convention that your visor comes down and you are handed the lance. When you're handed the lance, your opponent knows that you're ready to go, and there you go. So they start at each other. Henry was jousting against Charles Brandon, and for some reason, Henry didn't put his visor down. So Charles Brandon, he's been handed he's got his visor down, so he can't see that the king hasn't got his visor down. But Henry goes with his visor up. He shouldn't have really been handed his lance, and Charles Brandon's lance shatters, and it pushes the visor up further. So this shattered lance they do shatter. And if you I've got a video on YouTube, and I've got a video of a joust that was done at where was it done? Near Bromsgrove, Avencroft Museum, and I've slowed it down so you can see the lance shattering. If one of those splinters had been a little bit further south, then that would have been the end of Henry. It really shakes up Charles Brandon. He says, I am not jousting against the king again. Forget it. Henry goes on and jousts another 5 or 6 times that day to prove that he's fine. I'm fine, everybody. But it must have shaken him up. So you start to think, what kind of impact did that actually have on Henry? Knowing what we know of his future. His future. Lisa says Henry II of France died this way. Oh, yes. Oh, that rings a bell. Yes. Jenna also says the same. Thank you, Lisa and Jenna. Michael, you should do an interview with Toby Capwell because he jousts. Okay, cool. That would be interesting. That would be very interesting. Because those kind of practicalities, isn't it? The fact that you know, they couldn't see or hear. Well, how would you know that unless you tried? You could guess, I suppose, but how would you know that unless you tried a helmet on and and had a go. And this is this practical history that that can pull the assumptions out of a story that we've repeated faithfully. Anyway, yeah. So yeah, that would be really interesting. Thank you, Michael. I will see about getting in touch with him. I've not heard of him before, but that would be fun. And the other, I think it be honest, was on this International Women's Day. I don't need a day. I don't know about you, but whatever. Where Queen Anne, she ascended to the throne. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Oh, Michael said, oh, okay, fine. Thank you, Michael. Let's just see about getting to touch with him. So Queen Anne comes to the throne. That was on the 8th of March, 1702. Now, of course, when she comes to the throne, she's the Queen separately of England, Scotland, Wales, and Ireland. Because you're not united as a United Kingdom of Great Britain until later, until 1714. Marion says, what would have happened to Charles Brandon had he died? I don't think anything. Really, maybe shamed, but I don't. I mean, it's jousting. It's it's their faux battles, and it would have been clear. Possibly the guy who handed in the lance might have been in more trouble. I don't know actually what happened to him. Does anybody know what happened to the guy who handed Henry VIII the lance? Because that's really the key. He shouldn't have been handed the lance. He wasn't ready. So that wasn't clever, and that's what set, as far as Brandon was concerned, King was ready to go, so he went. So there's 2 anniversaries this week: the murder of Rizio in front of Mary Queen of Scots, and Henry VIII nearly dies in a jousting accident in 1524. Of course, he has another one in 1536. Magellan is probably beheaded. What, Charles or the guy with the lance? The guy who handed him the lance. Yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting thought. I'm just going to quickly mention Anne, because I wasn't going to go into it in any detail. It was just to mention because I think it's interesting. And I did promise I was going to do a series on the transfer of power between one monarch to the next. Doug says that I called him the Kingslayer. We might have done in retrospect. No, we wouldn't have really known that he was going to be like that, would we, if he'd have died in 1524? Lisa says raising the visor may be the origin of saluting. Oh, I see. The guy gave the lance. Oh yeah, the guy gave the lance prematurely. Yeah, maybe he was just dispatched. Not sure. So so when Queen, so yes, I was going to do this series, and I may still do it, of videos just talking about the transfer of power between each monarch to the next. I don't want to start with the Norman invasion, because that seems very lazy, because before that is extremely pivotal, interesting, and anyone who's been watching any of the latest dramas, I say latest to me because I've only just got into The Last Kingdom, and if you don't watch that, then I suggest you do. You can thank me later. It's extremely interesting period, and like I say, very pivotal. It's when England became one country for William to come in and conquer. It was when Christianity, that move from paganism to Christianity, and shouldn't really be neglected. But I'm anyway. So I was going to do that because the transfer of power is very, very rarely straightforward. Interestingly, something like the transfer of power between Henry VII and Henry VIII is probably one of the smoothest. And and Henry VIII, I was going to say to Edward VI, but yeah, was smooth, and we get, but most of the time it's an issue, it's a problem. Now with Anne, so Anne came to the throne, like I say, 8th of March 1702, and if you're looking at your ruler, I have two. Do you want to see them? Probably don't, but I'm going to show you anyway. Oh, someone at the door, and go away. My ruler and my ruler. She's then you've got William and Mary, then you've got Anne, then you've got the Georges. It just doesn't sort of give you any indication of just how awkward the transfers of power. But when Anne came to the throne, her father her father James II, who had escaped to the continent, who was living in exile in France, he had died the previous year, and he had a son who'd been born in Britain, in London, in Hampton Court Palace, also called James. And it wasn't clear cut, or at least in the exiled court, it wasn't clear cut that Anne was going to take the throne back after her brother-in-law William III died, and that she may have felt that blood was thicker than whatever, and that she would have invited him back to take the throne as James III. Obviously, we know that didn't happen. And when it came to talking about Anne's succession, instead of it going to, I don't know whether James was still alive, but he had a son called Charles, Bonnie Prince Charlie. He that line was totally, because it was Catholic, totally looked over, and we get the Hanoverians instead. We get a king who doesn't even speak English and doesn't want to be here. Now, the Georgians are going to be the topic of next week's History After Dark. I can't probably on this live stream tell you what I think of them. I'm trying to think of a title for that room that doesn't begin with an F. Yeah. But anyway, so next week's History After Dark, 8:15 on Wednesday, on history.after.dark on Instagram, we'll be talking about the Georgians. Funny lot. Funny, entertaining, but probably at the time most perturbing to have in charge. So yeah, sorry, anyway, the door has now been answered, which is good. Have any of you seen about the exhibition, the new Anne Boleyn exhibition? I'm just going to mention this quickly, the Anne exhibition at Hever Castle. Royally dysfunctional. Oh, Jenna, I like it. Michael says, I love the Georgian period. They certainly knew how to dress. Gotta give them that. They did know how to wig it up, didn't they? They really did. Hi, chewing gums. Don't worry. You can always go back and listen to the chat. Welcome. I'm glad you've joined us. Anyway, doesn't matter. It's fine. Thank you. So yeah, so join us next week for History After Dark, because we'll talk about the Georgians. That's actually, that was me deciding that I would really like to talk about them, because I missed the discussion last week, as you know, because I wasn't very well, talking about bad romance, and the Georgians are perfect to be talking about that. So I said, can we do the Georgians? And the girl said yes. Chewing Gum says, let's be honest, people dressed better years ago. I agree. We talked about this last week, didn't we? Yeah. It's yeah, I feel like we need some kind of revival of hats or something, we need to dress better. Mad Journalist, History After Dark earburn, because I'm sure you don't want to be here chatting with us lot all day. Oh, so last night's Mary says the Edwardians, they all dressed better than us. That's no offense to anyone now, but yeah, you wouldn't in Tudor, Edwardian, Georgian. To be fair, even 20 years ago, you would not have seen someone down the supermarket in their slippers. I'll leave that there. So last night's History After Dark, we were joined by Julian Humphries. And if you want to watch the playback, then please head over to history.after.dark on Instagram. It's still there. And he's written A to Z of toilets. So we went there. It was very funny, very interesting though as well. Stories around toilets. He's extremely entertaining, Julian. Now, the podcast used to go live on a Wednesday for History After Dark. It will now go live every Monday, and it is mainly previous episodes. So if you've missed any or you want to relive them, and why not, the poo stick? Yeah, Katie, what was that called? Oh, that was so funny. The X begins with an X, doesn't it? Lisa says people dressed in their gym jams should be prevented from entering the shop. How do they not think, no, I won't leave the house looking like that? What? Jenna says, oh yes, I've always thought how much fun it would be to live in the 50s and have the opportunity to wear cocktail dresses and go to dinner. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like we've lost our way with fashion. Yeah, if you want to wear really nice clothes, you're going to have to be sort of, I don't know, go back to a different. There used to be a lovely vintage shop in the town that I live. I wish I'd have got more stuff, but the kicker is they were a lot smaller than we were, or they were a lot smaller than I was anyway, than I am. Lisa has some neighbours like this. I feel like there needs to be a public information sign or something. Like we've had all the social distancing ones. Just don't leave your house if you've got your slippers on and your pajamas. Chewing gums. Couldn't imagine Henry VIII walking around in his onesie. Mad journalist. I'm a bit 20s, 30s, 60s, bit of 70s, bit of 80s, mainly 40s. 40s and 50s. Can't deal with that much excess fabric, wigs, bedazzling, and arsenic. Yes, the face powder, the arsenic face powder. The 50s are fabulous. So you have red lipstick, mascara, and I find the fashion so elegant because everything's covered and yet feminine. And the men dressed smart. Men, I want to see you in suits all the time. All the time. I want to see you smart. I'm on a one-woman mission now to smarten up the world. As she says, sat here in jeans and a t-shirt. Oh well. But yeah, there's very distinct fashion periods, isn't there? And then what's now? Like we don't even have flares. I mean, people do wear flares, but that's borrowed. That's like, what have we got? Anyway, I'm going off on one now. I was going to look for the poo stick name. I can't remember what it is. I'll have a look. We'll post it on History After Dark. It was very funny, but yeah, check that out. It was really interesting. Yeah, mad journalist. Men were so dapper. No jeans below the bum. Yeah, I don't want to see your pants. I don't want to see your pants. Marion, I love the Edwardsley I don't know what that word is, sorry, but not their bathing suits. Oh yeah, the full-on drown suits. You can only swim if you're in a lot of cloth, which isn't a great idea. Michael, a well-dressed woman leaves more to the imagination. Well, indeed. Keep some back, ladies. Keep some back. Keep your slippers inside as well, please. All right, how do we get onto that? Oh, actually, talking of dresses. So at this exhibition, I was going to say about at Hever Castle, it's about Anne Boleyn because there's a lot of things going on this year in the Anne Boleyn world, celebrating the 500-year anniversary of her appearing at court. So Hever have got an exhibition on. It runs till October, which I'm very, very happy about because I have 3 tours going to Hever this year, one in May, one in July, one in September. So the exhibition will still be there for all the tour groups. So I'm really, really happy about that. but there is a dress there, a reproduction of a dress worn by Anne Boleyn, and it was commissioned. And I'm afraid I forget the lady's name who's commissioned the dress, but it was commissioned with Samantha Rees. And Samantha Rees is providing the dresses for people. Basically, if you come on one of my tours, then I try and get in a day where you can dress as a Tudor. And Samantha Rees supplies the dresses and men's dress costume as well. And it's Samantha who's made this dress, that's on display as part of the Anne Boleyn exhibition at Hever Castle. So if you've seen a picture of that, perhaps on Instagram or whatever, then that's Sam's dress, which is lovely. So yes, can't wait. 10 weeks to go till we go on tour, which is going to be fantastic. So what else do you want to talk about? So we've talked about Anne-ish. I wasn't going to do a lot about Anne. Basically, I've got a video on the jousting accident. I've got a video on Queen Anne coming to the throne. I've got a video on the Rizio murder, all on YouTube, if you want to go and check those out. René likes the frills and bow hats of the Georgian era. I get what you mean about the faff, though. I do understand what you mean about the faff. Yeah. Oh, to let you know, 15th, which is next Tuesday, I have it's a talk in situ at Ludlow Castle with hi, History Biz Club, how are you doing? With Matt Lewis. And originally it was a talk that went into Patreon, but when it goes over 12 months, then some of the videos will be on general release. This one with Matt is one of those. So next Tuesday, Matt Lewis talking from Ludlow Castle about the history of Ludlow Castle. And I've based this week's Just for Fun question on that video. So you'll have to listen up in a moment as well, because I'll tell you about that. Now, I was going to say something about Marion's asking about Queen Anne's statue. So Queen Anne, so if you have a look at my Instagram, if you haven't seen it already, I showed a picture yesterday of a statue of Queen Anne that stands in the Long Gallery at Blenheim Palace. Now, Blenheim Palace was built by the Duke and Duchess of Marlborough. Really, it was the Duchess Sarah Churchill who oversaw most of the building work, completed it after her husband's death, regardless of the fact that she didn't like it. She didn't really want it. So it had this statue commissioned of Anne. Because Sarah, I'm trying to think when Sarah died now. She outlived her sort of contemporaries significantly. But I don't know how, Marion's asking, do I know how long it took for Sarah to have the statue of Queen Anne? I don't know how long the statue took to create. The thing with Sarah Churchill, now, actually, let me give you something to go and listen to. I did an interview with Antonia Keeney, who is the social historian at Blenheim Palace, about Sarah Churchill, the Duchess of Marlborough. And one of the things she was saying was that, I mean, Sarah was an incredibly complex character. I'll say that, or you could call her human, maybe, in that she could hold a grudge, she could create a grudge, and she saw things from her point of view and had difficulty with seeing them from another point of view. She fell out with Queen Anne. Obviously, Queen Anne had bestowed on her a lot of favour, a lot of money, well, between her and her husband, the Duke of Marlborough, titles, and that's where the dukedom comes from. And they, but in life, she was. She knew her before she was queen as well. They sort of Anne had asked her to be very honest with her, not to change when Anne became queen, not to treat her any differently, not to speak to her any differently, to tell her how it was. Well, Sarah Churchill wasn't exactly someone who needed telling, or given permission to say things as she saw them. She would definitely just go ahead and do that. She has listened. If you listen to the interview with Antonia Keeney, what I'll do is on YouTube, you'll be able to find it straight after this. It's on my channel. On Instagram, I'll put a link to it. It's really insightful. The interview I did with Antonia about Sarah Churchill. And the book, I mean, she wrote a book, Sarah Churchill, to her friends, I can't remember the title of it, but it was basically a summary, as she saw it, of all the wrongs that had been done to her. It was just literally things that had happened just from Sarah's perspective, and how badly treated she'd been. She fell out with her daughters, she fell out with Anne, but she outlived them all, and in death she revered their memories. It's like all was pardoned and rose-tinted glasses. So she would, so it's not a surprise that she would then create a monument to Anne in the house that Anne provided the land and the money to build. Sarah Churchill is the one that in a temper tantrum had the Palace of Woodstock completely wiped from the face of the earth, except for the stones used to build a bridge. So she, have a look at that interview. I will give you a reason to do that now. Actually, let's do this this week's just for fun question. So last week's question was based on the video I did about Rule Britannia and the real story about Rule Britannia, the song, the rousing song that's supposed to be sang at the end of the proms, that some people get very offended by now. And that's why I think the story about how Rule Britannia came to be written is really interesting. So my question was, on what occasion was Rule Britannia first performed? Because it was not written as a patriotic song. It was written as part of a I always want to say musical because I always had music in it, but I don't think it would have been referred to as a musical then. But it would have been I'm going to call it a musical. And it was commissioned by Prince Frederick. Imagine says, let me just see if I can touch the screen without making everything go wrong. Yeah, she is an utter bandit and should have been stripped of everything and imprisoned for destroying a historical site. Well, there'd have been a lot of people in prison as well, wouldn't there, for doing that. That's that happened a lot. History because there's nothing wrong with crushing a few Scots. Play. Colleen says play. Yeah, I always think of a play as without music, but no, maybe yeah, I agree. You're right. Like a Mamma Mia type thing. Yeah, let's go with that. Michael says, was it Nelson's funeral? It wasn't. Anyone? Performance? Yes, clear. Yes. Anyway, so if you have a look at that video, it's called, but it was first performed. It was the finale to this performance, and it was a story based on the legendary King Arthur, I think. And anyway, it was part of the whole politic going on between father, son, separate courts that always seemed to happen in the Georgian period, where the king had his, the Prince of Wales had his, and being something like a patron of the arts was a way to distinguish yourself, but also get propaganda written. Really, if you think about, what does music and storytelling do? Is it rouses emotions? It gives people belief that they know a true story. Blah 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 blah. Anyway, But so it was adopted after this as a more patriotic song, but it was first performed at the 3rd birthday party of Princess Augusta, who was Prince Frederick's daughter, and it was performed in an outdoor amphitheatre at Clevedon House in Buckinghamshire. So it's actually a private performance. Yeah, so there you go. So that was this week's, or last week's, sorry, Alfred. Yeah, watch the video. I can't remember. Oh, goodness me. So that was last week's Just for Fun question. This week's is based on the interview with Antonia, because I'm trying to encourage you to have a listen to it. It's on the podcast as well, so you can look it up and have a listen, because I think you'll find it really interesting. And this week's question, based on that interview with Antonia Keeney, is: which member of the royal family did Sarah Churchill, Duchess of Marlborough, want her granddaughter, Lady Diana Spencer, to marry? So Sarah Churchill had a granddaughter called Lady Diana Spencer. Which member of the royal family did she want her to marry? Go watch afterwards. You'll enjoy the answer. I'm sure. What time are we on? 56 minutes. Woo! Doing well again. So if you, let me remind you before we go, if you're a patron, then today you can have a look inside Acton Court. That has gone live. And History Biscuit, Princess Anne, no. No. Princess Anne wasn't alive by this point. Queen Anne, Princess Anne, or just an Anne? Sorry, let me just have a look at some Royal Britannia the musical. I'd definitely go and see it. Michael says, not Prince Charles, lol. Ooh, you're gonna have to watch. You're gonna have to watch, Michael, and you'll find out. Then you can tell me next week. Although next week I might be on location. If I am on location next week, then we won't be doing the Just for Fun question. I'm still to decide what I am doing next week. But if I'm on location, you'd have to wait till the week after, or just once you watch the video, you'll know. Oh, Perseverance 1501 has been at Hampton Court. I hope you've had a lovely day. So you've made it. You've made it here. It loves the Just for Fun questions. Good. I'm glad. Marion says, was it Prince Frederick or King George III? No. Well, no. Yeah. I'm going to let you. I'm going to leave it because I think it's a cool answer. From the US, well, welcome, Perseverance. I hope you're having a lovely time in the UK. Spring is starting to spring. It's a little bit cool, a little bit wet sometimes, but you've come when all the blossom is out and all the daffodils and crocuses. So this is one of my favourite times. Well, in a couple of weeks, it's my favourite time of year when it's a little bit warm, because I am a little bit nesh. But yeah, welcome. I hope you're having a fun time. So remember on Tuesday to have a look out for Matt Lewis talking from Ludlow Castle. Again, I think you'll really enjoy that. And patrons, go and have a look at patreon.com/British History. It is the virtual tour of Acton Court today, which is fabulous. That was a stop on the progress of summer progress of Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn in 1535. So this is Sarah, the Tudor Travel Guide, talks about this progress a lot. We've got the tour in September I'm doing with Sarah. That's based on one of the legs of the progress, and it was not only was it a happy time for Anne Boleyn, but it's also during this progress that Cromwell and his men are starting to go and have a little poke around the monasteries, some of whom were at the monasteries and abbeys, some of whom were hosting them, and their hospitality was rudely replied to in the following years, as we know. So yeah, so go and have a look at that. I did a blog last week, so everyone who's a patron has access to the blog where I explained in succinct fashion, but hopefully because I was trying to make it clear how we came to be, how it came to be that the heir to the English and subsequently British throne is the Prince of Wales. Why would he be the Prince of Wales? So I've gone into that story in the blog. So if you're not a patron and you'd like to be, you do get lots of benefits, and it's at patreon.com/British history. But if you just want to help me and support me and my work, you can just buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Philippa. It's all welcome. But I think other than to tell you about, well, just to remind you of the next few live events coming up, I will leave you to your day. So join me tomorrow, 4 o'clock. It's Visiting Tudor Britain, and we're talking about Salisbury Cathedral. And then on Wednesday, it's History After Dark, and we're talking about the Georgians. Renee, which video are you talking about? The video won't work. Let me know. So thank you, everyone. Have a great day. And I will see you all really soon. All right. Bye for now.